All right, the highly anticipated Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards have been released by Dave Meltzer. And of course, the votes are in, and a lot of the discourse already on Twitter, YouTube, everywhere else surrounding the winners of these awards, as is the case every single year. And one in particular we're going to focus on is the Booker of the Year, which this time around went to Paul Levesque, aka Triple H. And we'll talk a bit about, hey, was Triple H the right choice? Kind of looking at where things are with WWE right now on the road to WrestleMania 40, what they've accomplished over the past year or so from a creative standpoint, and everything else. But before we do that, let's look at the votes themselves and see kind of where this stood in terms of how the voting shook out. And you can see the votes here in the graphic. You can see how many votes that each of these bookers received in the voting for the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards. And you see Triple H in the top spot with 360 votes there. And you see second place is Tony Khan, who, of course, has won the award previously, getting 146. So Triple H kind of lapping the field here this year, which I don't think is a huge surprise, and we'll talk about why in a second. But, you kind of keep going down if you're looking at some of the names that obviously stand out on this list. I've seen some people bring up Shawn Michaels in terms of maybe Michaels didn't get as many votes as they would have thought, but I think, again, NXT is just completely it's different, right? I mean, I think NXT's done a really good job over the past year of kind of building up, people, getting them ready for the main roster. There's a little bit more of a connection between the two, whereas, we know before there was just a complete disconnect, it feels like, back in the day between WWE and NXT. But I think they've continued to kind of, secure that in terms of just building that connection so that, whether you have people going to the main roster from NXT or you have main roster people going down NXT for different programs and all that. So I think that's an interesting one, but I'm not going to say that I'm just completely stunned that Shawn Michaels, is seventh on this list and didn't get as many votes as, again, people in promotions that are kind of standalone, whether it's a, CMLL or an All Japan, Stardom, New Japan, all the ones that are kind of in front of them, outside of WWE main roster with Triple H and, of course, AEW with Tony Khan. But, Scott D'Amore, who we know was just sort of left Impact Wrestling, or TNA Wrestling, I guess you could say now. He's there at ninth. But look, I think this was one where if you just look at the voting and everything that played out, the question is, right, and we put it in the title, it's like, did the Triple H deserve it? And I can tell you with 100% certainty, yes. Like, Triple H was probably doing as well of a booking job over the past year as probably he's ever done. I think I would probably say that and feel pretty confident in doing so. Sure, there were times where they were just clicking all the time in NXT, right? Back in the black and gold days, early stages of NXT, they were on point. There were a lot of things they were doing well, but it was a different dynamic. It wasn't, the main roster. It wasn't, the business wasn't necessarily, dependent on fantastic booking, right? NXT was what it was. It was just kind of, at that time, was certainly developmental, kind of seen that way as sort of just, and sure, eventually it felt like the third brand because of the legitimacy that I think that Triple H had built into NXT. But now, this is completely different. You're doing it on the main stage, the biggest stage that WWE has in terms of the main roster. And when you just look at it from a creative standpoint, there are things about WWE that I know, and we're not going to get into a WWE versus AEW war here because you can find that anywhere else you want to on the internet probably. But there are things that WWE does, I know, just being a sports entertainment-based promotion that may not sit well, with other fans, whether it is AEW, whether it's a New Japan, places like that, where you don't see as many of those elements, of those kind of things. But I think what you've seen Triple H do, he's really tied in a lot more of the professional wrestling aspects, right? It's like for the longest time, WWE was just hitting you over the head with sports entertainment, sports entertainment, sports entertainment. But now you see with the way they like to tell stories, with the way Triple H likes to book, a lot of it is tying in the old school professional wrestling type elements. And I think that's why you're seeing the WWE business now. It's the combination of the two. It's, yes, you're going to have the sports entertainment type stuff, but you're also going to have the things I think that this company had been missing for quite a while in terms of the main roster, the professional wrestling aspects, the storytelling, all those little bitty tiny things that made professional wrestling companies successful, whether it was in the 80s, the 90s, whenever it was. There's just a lot more of those elements tied in, and also I think there's something to the fact that you're not always just insulting your fans' intelligence, and I think there were times where WWE was just guilty of that. I mean, when the times when WWE fans were as frustrated as they've ever been, usually it was that. It was part of just like, hey, we know you're there, we know you exist, but we're going to do it the way we want to do it, and we're not going to listen to the fans. And if we insult your intelligence with these particular storylines, then so be it. This is the way we're going to do it, right? But now I think you see a lot more of that. And I think in terms of the pivoting, the ability to pivot away and give fans what they want. And look, maybe one element of that is the most recent biggest thing we've seen in WWE from a creative standpoint, and that is just the complete change, it feels like, of the story involving Cody Rhodes heading into WrestleMania 40. Was that the plan from the start? We've all debated that time and time again over the past couple of weeks with everything from The Rock turning heel, aligning with Roman Reigns and the bloodline, all of that. You can find plenty of videos where we talked about it here. But I think that has been one of the key differences in why WWE has been as successful as they've been over the past year, or even more now in terms of the creativity and the on-screen product. Yes, we know there's been plenty of stuff going on off of the screen that obviously is on another level in terms of that. But if we're just looking at this particular award within the professional wrestling landscape of weekly television, I think it's easy to understand why Triple H would be the winner of this award this year, because he's tied in all these different things where, look at the ratings. They're on another level than kind of where, they were a couple years ago. And you just kind of see the momentum that's building and building and building. I mean, you've built up stars, right? And I think that's always been, at times it's wild to think, but maybe that has been one of the issues at times with WWE. It's just sort of the 50-50 aspect of things, not wanting to, build up guys who are just clearly the main attraction. Cody Rhodes is clearly the main attraction now when you look at kind of the stars that they built. We know Roman Reigns has been there for a while, but you look at what Cody's doing. He's there every single week, and you just kind of see the way they built him up, the story. I know some people may be tired of hearing about the story, but look what it's doing from a business perspective. And I just think you look at it, that's just one part of the equation. Like the Cody thing is just one part. I think what we've seen is WWE, again, be willing to listen to what the fans want. You go, and I think something else that's been a lot more interesting in terms of maybe how Triple H has been able to book is doing all these particular, events on location where you're getting all these site fees to do Elimination Chamber in Australia, to do Money in the Bank in London, to do all these different ones, right? I mean, think about the one in Puerto Rico. That was Backlash, right? And so that's allowed you to kind of just feed into a rabid fan base that wants you to give them what they want. And you see kind of how they booked these particular events too. Like they don't just book it without just completely factoring in, someone who should be factored into the mix there, right? And I know like this latest one, the Elimination Chamber. Sure, Bronson Reed's not on there. We all, I think, sort of expected. I made the prediction. I thought he would be the men's Elimination Chamber, but like Rhea Ripley is seen as one of the biggest stars going into this. And again, she may main event Elimination Chamber with Nia Jax. We don't know in terms of the order yet of the card, but it's how they're really leaning into, again, giving people what they want. And I think sometimes it can be that easy. Like you don't have to complicate this. And I think Triple H is I think it's just the background, right? It is the old school guy who grew up, loving kind of the Ric Flair style of professional wrestling. You see a lot of those old school NWA type elements, territory days type elements to the way he likes to book. And it can be pretty simple. Like it can be not that complicated. You don't have to complicate things too much. And I think they've kept it very simple. They've built up a lot of kind of people to, build into new stars and the new storylines and all this other stuff. And I think it's really just, again, I mean, it shows in the business metrics. Like WWE is hotter than it's been in a long, long time from a business standpoint. And, it's not just the fact they have a lot of money. It's not just the fact that people are paying them money. They're doing it because the product is good. Like the product isn't what it's not stale anymore, right? It's not what it used to be. And I think, that makes it, to me, very easy to understand why Triple H would win this award, even though, look, it's an award. It's an award voted on. It's not the end-all, be-all. But I think it is okay at times, too, to sit back and say, all right, hey, maybe Triple H deserves some props here for kind of what he's put together because this WrestleMania 40 card is shaping up to be tremendous. There's been so many kind of big-time moments over the past year, whether it's the return of a CM Punk willing to say, hey, we're going to do this. Like, we know there's the past history there, but we're going to do it because, man, there's a lot of booking ideas we can work with to bring back a CM Punk and give fans what they want. And, remember, so many sort of memorable segments and angles and everything over the past year. And I think, again, it just kind of speaks volumes in terms of what WWE has become and how different it is from a booking standpoint than what it used to be. And I think, again, a lot of credit has to go for Triple H for that. He's not everything. Like, he's not making every decision, but he is the person who is driving this thing, I think, in terms of creatively, in a direction that it's not been in a long time. And that has resulted in huge business for WWE here as we move towards WrestleMania 40. So let me know what you think about Triple H winning the Booker of the Year by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. What are your other thoughts on any other awards? I don't know that we'll get to every one of them. It's a lot of awards. Well, we may do videos for a couple others just to kind of look at some thoughts and maybe the front runners in a couple of these other awards. But this was one. Again, you kind of look at the momentum WWE has built in terms of the creative momentum. There's a lot of it right now. And, it could only continue to get, sort of more in the right direction here as we head towards WrestleMania 40. So appreciate you guys watching as always. Let me know what you think about Triple H winning the Booker of the Year by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And give me your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button. New channel. Enjoy talking wrestling with you guys. Always love the feedback. So thanks for watching. Talk to you again here soon at Wrestling Reaction.